Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different, almost like a special bulletin, covering the major headlines really shaping India today, May 15th, 2025.
That's right. We've got quite a range: national security, international relations, some key economic moves, and domestic policy, too. Lots happening.
Definitely. And these things, they often seem separate, but they're usually connected, right? So we'll try to unpack that.
Absolutely. It's a snapshot of a nation dealing with, well, a lot of complex issues all at once. Let's dive right in.
Okay, first up, something involving e-commerce and national security. The Central Consumer Protection Authority, the CCPA, they've sent notices to Amazon, Flipkart, the big players.
Yeah, and the reason is pretty direct. They were found selling Pakistani flags on their platforms.
Right. And the government's response.
Pretty firm. Consumer Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi basically said zero tolerance, get them down immediately.
Have the companies responded yet?
Not immediately, or at least not publicly as far as we know. But the action itself, it speaks volumes, especially, given the timing.
You mean with the heightened tensions after Operation Sindoor?
Exactly. That was just last week, May 7th and 8th, following the awful Pahalgam attack back in April 26. Lives lost there. And let's not forget, Pakistan's violation of the ceasefire agreement is part of this context, too.
And this isn't the first time the CCPA has waded into the online marketplace over security concerns, is it?
No, you're right. Remember the issue with the unlicensed walkie-talkies being sold online that also raised security flags?
Oh, yes.
So this move, it kind of reinforces a pattern. The government's really focusing on regulatory compliance and national security, even in the digital space. It's a clear signal about priorities.
Okay, moving north now. Our second headline deals with India and China, specifically Arunachal Pradesh. India has strongly rejected China's latest attempt to rename places there.
Yes, this is a recurring issue, isn't it? China keeps putting out lists of its own names for places in Arunachal Pradesh, essentially asserting its claim.
And India's response? Consistent.
Very consistent. The External Affairs Ministry spokesperson, Ranadhir Jaiswal, called it futile, baseless. India maintains Arunachal Pradesh is an integral, indivisible part of the country. Full stop.
It does seem like a regular tactic from China. Didn't they release another list of names just last year? Something like 30 names?
They did. It really just highlights the ongoing, very complex border dispute between the two countries. It's not going away.
And it's not just about lines on a map, is it? There are other dimensions.
Absolutely. Water resources are a huge factor. China's building that massive hydroelectric dam on the Yalong-Sanpo River.
Which becomes the Siang and then the Brahmaputra in India.
Exactly. So territorial disputes and resource control, they get tangled up. These renaming efforts are just one part of China showing its unwavering position on its claims, and India keeps pushing back just as firmly.
Right. Let's shift gears a bit. Headline 3 points to something interesting happening with travel patterns. Apparently, there's been a noticeable drop in travel bookings from India to countries seen as, well, supportive of Pakistan.
Yeah, this seems to be a direct consequence of recent events, particularly Operation Sindoor. It looks like public sentiment is really influencing travel choices now.
So people are maybe voting with their wallets, so to speak.
It appears that way. Countries like Turkey and Azerbaijan, for example, are reportedly seeing fewer bookings from India. There seems to be a heightened national awareness influencing these decisions.
And are people choosing other destinations instead?
Yes. The report suggests a shift towards Western countries and also Southeast Asian destinations. It seems travelers might be opting for places perceived as more aligned with India or perhaps just neutral in the current situation.
Interesting. And travel companies must be noticing this.
Oh, definitely. They'd have to be adjusting their marketing, maybe promoting different packages. It just shows how geopolitical events can ripple out and affect sectors like tourism quite directly. A real indicator of public mood, perhaps.
Okay, turning back to the Pahalgam attack aftermath. Headline 4 says India is planning to present evidence about it at the UN Security Council. Today, in fact.
Yes, this is a significant diplomatic step. The goal is to clearly lay out the involvement of the Resistance Front, or TRF, in that attack.
And India's position is that TRF isn't independent, right?
Correct. India identifies TRF as a proxy group for Lashkar-e-Taiba, a well-known terrorist organization. So the aim at the UNSC is twofold: expose this connection and push for stronger international action against these groups.
What kind of evidence are we talking about?
Reports suggest it's quite comprehensive. Intelligence intercepts, communications data, forensic analysis, basically building a strong case.
It shows a commitment to holding them accountable.
Exactly. And it ties directly back to Operation Sindoor and India's broader point about cross-border terrorism and Pakistan's alleged role, despite ceasefire agreements. It's a combination of military response and diplomatic pressure.
Using all the tools available.
Precisely. Leveraging international platforms like the UNSC is a key part of that strategy.
Now let's get into Operation Sindoor itself. Headline 5 reveals something quite remarkable about the Indian Air Force's performance during that operation on May 7th.
Yes, this is quite the revelation. India is stating that the IAF managed to effectively bypass and jam Pakistan's air defense systems during the strikes. And significantly, these were China-supplied systems.
Bypassed and jammed. How quickly?
In just 23 minutes, according to the reports. The operation targeted key air bases, Nur Khan and Rahim Khan, with surgical precision, neutralizing radar and missile systems. And crucially, this was done without crossing the line of control or the international border.
And there was mention of specific technology used.
Yes, a research note from the Press Information Bureau mentioned the deployment of loitering munitions. It suggests a very sophisticated, carefully planned strike framed as a response to an earlier attack by the Pakistan military.
This really underscores India's capabilities.
Absolutely, especially in electronic warfare and precision strike capabilities. The fact that it was effective against Chinese systems, given the military cooperation between China and Pakistan, adds, well, another layer of significance. It definitely signals India's growing technological edge in this area.
Okay, let's stay with Operation Sindoor for headline 6, digging a bit deeper into the details and the overall impact.
Right. So just to recap, Operation Sindoor launched May 7th, targeting terror camps in Pakistan and Polk. This was the direct response to the Pahalgam attack on April 22nd.
And a key point mentioned was the lack of Indian losses.
Yes, zero loss of Indian assets, which really showcases the advanced capabilities involved: surveillance, targeting, execution. The precision against Nur Khan and Rahim Khan taking out radar and missile systems with those loitering munitions was highlighted again.
And the political calibration aspect.
Crucial. Staying within its side of the law, sea, and international boundary was clearly a deliberate part of the strategy.
Now, Pakistan did attempt to retaliate, didn't they?
They did, on May 7th and 8th, targeting Indian military installations, reportedly with drones and missiles. But India successfully neutralized these threats using its integrated counter-UAS grid and air defense systems.
So India's defenses held up well.
Exceptionally well, it seems. And India then responded again on May 8th, this time targeting Pakistan's air defense systems, including some near Lahore.
Were specific Indian systems mentioned?
Yes, the performance of indigenous systems like Akash, Pechora, and OSAK was praised. It highlights the effectiveness of India's layered air defense.
And coming back to the jamming.
Right, the 23-minute bypass and jamming of the China-supplied systems. It all points towards India's growing self-reliance at Manubharta in drone tech, electronic warfare, layered air defense, and you can't forget ISRO's satellite role in monitoring, too.
A very comprehensive picture of advanced capability.
Definitely. It shows a significant leap in technological sophistication and operational planning.
Okay, headline 7 takes us to Bangladesh. There seems to be a shift in stance from the interim leader, Mohammed Yunus, regarding regional economic integration.
Yes, this is interesting. He recently met Nepal's deputy speaker and apparently advocated for closer economic ties between Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and India's 7 sister states in the northeast.
How is that a shift? What was his position before?
Well, back in March, his comments were quite different. He described India's northeast as landlocked, dependent on Bangladesh for sea access, and was actively pitching for Chinese investment, positioning Bangladesh almost as a gateway for China into the region.
Quite a contrast.
It is. This new emphasis is on regional cooperation, mutual gain among the immediate neighbors. It could signal a potential recalculation in Bangladesh's diplomatic and economic strategy.
Maybe strengthening ties with India is now seen as more beneficial, especially with India's own focus on developing the Northeast.
That could be a factor. India has been investing heavily in infrastructure and connectivity there. Of course, realizing this kind of broad regional integration faces many hurdles, but the shift in rhetoric itself is noteworthy.
Definitely one to watch to see if it translates into concrete actions.
For sure. It could potentially reshape some regional dynamics if it moves forward.
Now, on to technology and self-reliance again. Headline 8. India is set to begin trials of its first homemade general-purpose graphics processing units GPUs before the end of this year.
This is a big deal for India's semiconductor ambitions. Developing indigenous GPUs is critical. These are the chips needed for, AI training, heavy data analytics, cloud platforms, supercomputers.
So reducing reliance on the current big players.
Yeah,
AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, Qualcomm.
exactly. That's a major goal. The project is led by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeitY, with CD and NEGID heavily involved. And significantly, it's based on indigenous open source architecture.
What's the timeline looking like?
They're aiming for 29 prototypes by the end of 2025 for performance evaluation. Mass production and commercial scaling, that's projected for around 2029 after fine-tuning. Remember, there were previous plans mentioned for an indigenous AI chip by 2027, too.
So it fits into a larger strategy.
Absolutely. It's central to the Make in India push and the goal of becoming self-reliant in semiconductor manufacturing. It strengthens tech capabilities, bolsters AI and cloud infrastructure, really crucial for the future.
Okay, headline 9 brings us to a constitutional matter. President Draupadi Murmu has sought the Supreme Court's opinion on a ruling about deadlines for governors and the president to act on state bills.
Yes, she's used Article 143(1) of the Constitution, which allows the president to consult the Supreme Court. Her core concern seems to be about potential judicial overreach regarding the timelines set by the court.
This relates to that verdict from April.
Okay, that's the one. The April 8th verdict mandated specific deadlines, 3 months for governors to assent or return a bill, 1 month if it's repassed, and 3 months for the president if a bill is reserved for her consideration.
And the president is questioning the basis for this.
She is. Reports say she raised 14 questions, emphasizing that the Constitution itself, specifically Articles 200 and 201, which deal with assent, doesn't actually specify any time frame. She argues the concept of deemed assent, if the deadline passes, is alien to the constitutional framework.
What's her argument based on?
Her arguments seem to center on the discretionary powers of the governor and president, governed by principles like federalism, the need for uniformity, national security considerations, and, crucially, the separation of powers between the executive and judiciary.
Is she also questioning the specific articles the court used?
Apparently so.
Yeah.
She has reportedly criticized the use of Article 142, the court's broad power to ensure complete justice, arguing it shouldn't circumscribe the president's or governor's authority in this way, and also questions states using Article 32 for fundamental rights to bring center-state disputes to the SC, suggesting Article 131, which deals specifically with federal disputes, is the more appropriate route.
So it's a fundamental debate about constitutional interpretation and the balance of powers.
Exactly. A significant constitutional conversation is unfolding here.
Headline 10 shifts back to internal security. A major anti-Maoist operation in the Karagadalu Hills on the Chhattisgarh-Telangana border has concluded successfully after 21 days.
Yes, reports are calling it the biggest ever assault in that region, and it seems to have been highly effective. They recovered 31 bodies, including some senior Maoist leaders, and it's believed the Maoist command structure there has been scattered.
Union Home Minister Amit Shah commented on this.
He did, praising the security forces. And a key point highlighted was that despite very difficult terrain, bad weather, and the danger of landmines, there were no casualties among the security personnel, a testament to their planning and execution.
What were the specifics of the operation's success?
It targeted the PLGA Battalion No. 1, which is a major formation. They also cleared out cave units used for manufacturing arms. 28 Maoists were identified among the dead, including 2 Divisional Committee members and 11 PLGA fighters who carried combined rewards worth about 1.72 crore.
So a significant blow to their leadership and logistics.
Definitely. 4 arms manufacturing units dismantled, a large cache of weapons and supplies seized. It severely disrupts their military capability in the area. Intelligence also suggests growing mistrust within the Maoist leadership now.
And this fits into a broader government strategy.
Yes. Home Minister Shah has reiterated the commitment to eradicate Naxalism by March 2026, emphasizing the use of technical surveillance. This success follows similar ones in places like Chakrabanda in Bihar and Borapahar in Jharkhand. It shows a sustained push.
Okay, headline 11 circles back to semiconductors and manufacturing. Foxconn has gotten the green light from the Indian government to build a semiconductor plant.
That's right, a $435 million investment for a semiconductor fabrication plant, or fab. This is significant news.
And it's linked to Apple.
Yes, Foxconn is a major supplier for Apple, and this move is seen as part of Apple's broader strategy to diversify its manufacturing and supply chains away from heavy reliance on China.
So a win for India's Make in India goals.
A huge win. It's a major step in India's ambition to become a global semiconductor hub. This fab is expected to focus on advanced chips, specifically the kind needed for Apple's high-performance processors.
What are the expected impacts beyond just the plant itself?
Well, it should provide a significant boost to the entire semiconductor ecosystem in India. It's expected to attract further investment in related industries, create thousands of skilled jobs, and help develop local expertise.
India has been actively trying to attract this kind of investment, hasn't it?
Very actively, offering incentives, subsidies, all aimed at developing a domestic semiconductor industry and reducing dependence on imports for these critical components. And we know other big names like TSMC and Samsung have also been exploring possibilities in India. Foxconn getting approval is a strong signal.
A sign of growing momentum, perhaps.
Exactly. It could be a real turning point for India's semiconductor landscape.
Our 12th headline concerns defense tech again. India has successfully tested an indigenous anti-drone system called Bhargavastra.
Yes, another step forward in indigenous defense capability. Bhargavastra was developed by a Nagpur-based company, Solar Defense, and Aerospace Ltd. SDAL.
And its purpose.
It's designed specifically to counter drone threats, neutralizing swarms of drones, jamming enemy UAVs. It enhances India's existing two-layered air defense system.
How does it work? What are its capabilities?
They're pretty impressive, actually. It can launch 64 micro-rockets in a single burst, creating a kill radius of about 20 meters. And it uses that two-layered approach you mentioned. Unguided rockets for broader impact against swarms and micro-missiles for more precise targeting of specific drones.
And the tests were successful.
Yes, trials were conducted successfully in Odisha, in both single-shot and salvo modes, with Army officials present. It seems ready for the next stage.
And this comes after another success for the same company, SDAL.
That's right. Their Nagastra-1 kamikaze drone was reportedly used successfully during Operation Sindoor. So it showcases their growing expertise in drone and counter-drone technology. It really underlines India's push for self-reliance, or Manabharta, in critical military tech, especially electronic warfare and air defense.
Important advancements given modern threats.
Absolutely crucial.
And finally, our last headline, number 13, brings some potentially good news for the economy and agriculture. The monsoon is expected early this year.
Yes, considerably early. The forecast suggests it could arrive on the southern coast around May 27th, which is 5 days ahead of the usual schedule. That would make it the earliest onset in at least 5 years.
And that raises hopes for
Bumper harvests. Good news for crops like rice, corn, soybeans. The monsoon is just so critical for India's $4 trillion economy, providing about 70% of the annual rainfall, replenishing water sources, and vital for all the farmland that isn't irrigated.
Has the IMD given a forecast for the overall monsoon season?
They have. They're predicting an above-average monsoon for the second year in a row. So combined with the early arrival, it's very positive news.
How does the early arrival help farmers specifically?
It allows them to start planting sooner. This benefits the entire agricultural cycle, boosts food security, and, given the current geopolitical situation we've discussed, stability in food supply is particularly important right now.
It's the usual timeline.
Typically, it hits Kerala around June 1st and covers the whole country by mid-July, triggering widespread planting. Last year, it arrived May 30th, and we had the highest rainfall since 2020, which helped recovery after the 2023 drought.
So the expectation is a real boost this year.
Yes. Boosted agricultural output, better crop yields, potentially helping economic stability. It's definitely a welcome development.
So as we wrap up this special bulletin edition of the Deep Dive, it's really clear, isn't it? India is navigating a whole host of interconnected issues right now.
Absolutely. We've seen decisive moves on national security, both militarily and diplomatically, significant advancements in homegrown defense tech.
And then there's the international relations piece, the ongoing complexities with neighbors, potential shifts in regional strategies, even public sentiment affecting things like travel.
Exactly. And underneath all that, the drive for technological self-reliance, like with semiconductors, is crucial. Plus, those important domestic debates, like the one about constitutional powers and federalism.
And we ended on the monsoon, a reminder that fundamental factors like weather, still play a huge role in the economy and people's lives.
It's a really dynamic mix. Security, diplomacy, technology, domestic policy, economy, even nature, all interacting.
So thinking about all these threads, the focus on border security, the push for tech independence, the shifting economic and international ties, what do you see as maybe the biggest long-term challenge or perhaps the biggest opportunity for India in the years ahead?
That's a great question to ponder. I think, well, perhaps the biggest challenge, and maybe also the biggest opportunity, lies in balancing that need for robust national security in a tricky neighborhood. Balancing that with fostering stable, cooperative regional relationships that drive economic growth for everyone. Getting that balance right, navigating that complex path, that feels like the key long-term task.
A delicate balancing act indeed. It's clear these are all developing stories, and we'll certainly keep tracking them here on the Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us for this special look at the headlines.